This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Designs. If the name sounds familiar, that's because it's my design business and the work I do there helps make this podcast possible. If you love colorful and whimsical art prints, greeting cards, and journaling stickers, then head over to my Etsy shop for a delightful browse. Just search for Fine Lime, like the fruit, designs, all one word, on Etsy, or click the link in the show notes. And now, on with this week's episode. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfiel, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Melissa, and today the lovely Heather Travis is back for her January co-hosting duties.
Yoo-hoo! Hey,
Happy New Year, Heather.
Happy New Year to you, too.
For those of you who are maybe new to the podcast, Heather is an artist and a PR and communications professional, and she drops by once a month to co-host with me to talk about the business aspects of being a creative entrepreneur or a creative small business owner, and that's what we are doing today. So today we are going to be talking about something that I get asked about a lot, and that is, what do I send my newsletter list? So for those of you who may not know, one of my, it used to be a side gig, now it's more of a main gig, but one of the things that I do is I ghostwrite newsletters for a lot of people in the food space, mainly food bloggers, cookbook authors, and food YouTubers. So a lot of different types of content creators there. And one of the things that I made for myself several years ago was a list of all the different types of things that I could talk about in their newsletters without selling all the time. Because I think one of the things that trips us up maybe with newsletters is that we don't want to come across as being salesy or pushy or constantly asking for money. And so we are a little, not nervous. I think we're just at a loss for what to talk about to this. We've been told over and over and over again, you need to have a list, you need to nurture your list, you need to grow your list. That's great. But what do I send my list? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I have over 20 different types of content you can send your newsletter list, and we will put some links in the show notes. But one of the things I was actually thinking about doing this morning is putting together this list, and for those of you who are on our email list, we'll send you a free copy of this, and if you would like to get a copy of it, you can sign up for our newsletter list and you'll get a free download of all the different types of things that you can send your newsletter list. So before we dive in, if you are brand new to email marketing and this is something you really don't have a lot of experience with, or you maybe don't have a list and you're sort of wondering if you should start a list, I would highly recommend that you go back and listen to episode 59 that we did with Trina Waller of Redemption.
That's a great episode.
Yeah, she's from Redemption Marketing here in Abbotsford, BC, and she came by and we did an episode on the basics of email marketing, how to get yourself started, things like welcome series, the different platforms, some of the rules that you have to be aware of when you're emailing and all that stuff. So it's a great episode. I highly recommend you go back and listen to it. if you're at the point where you've got a list and now you are kind of like, I don't know what to send,
that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I really want to stress that when you are sending out newsletters, the first 4 letters of the word newsletter spell the word news. They don't spell the word sales. It's not a sales letter, it's a newsletter. So keep that in the back of your head when you're trying to think of what to send. And just remember that you don't have to sell. You shouldn't sell in every newsletter. I kind of go by the 25% rule.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's going to depend on how often you send newsletters out. The more frequently you send a newsletter out, you're going to change that percentage. And if you only send a newsletter out once a month, then that's a little different too. But one of the things Trina mentioned in her episode is that while you don't have to sell in every newsletter, do not be afraid to ask for the sale in every newsletter. And those are 2 different things. And we'll talk about those as we go through the episode. But for now, let's dive into this list, shall we?
Yes. I honestly, Melissa sent me this list in advance, obviously, of our call today. And as I hinted, this is something that I struggle with. You know, I'm a creative. I write content for other people, but writing content for myself, and I think
totally different.
A lot of us, it's totally different, and you're in a different boat. And even when it's not sales related, sometimes I still struggle with not being all about Heather. And I think that's why this list is so helpful, because there's so much to bring your community in. And I think that's really what we need to remember is exactly what you said. It's the news in the newsletter, but it's about servicing the community that you're trying to engage with, right?
Yes.
And that, when we think through that, and when I'm looking at this list now that we're going to discuss, that all of these serve that purpose. They all serve your community, and in serving your community, you're serving yourself. So I think that's, it's, but it's hard sometimes to do it. It really is. I sit and stare at that cursor in MailChimp and I'm like, what to talk about?
Yes.
So
it is hard. It can be really hard. And you made a really good point. It's totally different doing it for other people than it is to do it for yourself. Because we get all caught up in all the mindset stuff. And I know for so many creatives, asking for money is weird and awkward, and we don't like doing it, and so we're kind of like, well, what else do I do?
I know. And I'll tell you, even when stuff is for sale, like when I say I finished a new painting, like it's so obvious it is for sale. So I hesitate to even be like, and it's for sale, because it's sort of like, well, no duh, it's for sale.
Well, like, duh to you, it's for sale, but
right?
It might not be obvious. Like they might have be like, maybe she painted it as a gift. Maybe she's going to hang it on her own wall, right?
That's exactly it. And so it's like, what seems obvious to us that's why it's very tricky. So anyway, let's dive into this list, because I found it incredibly helpful, and I'm so excited that we get to share this with you guys, because I think a lot of people will find it very helpful.
I hope so. So this list is in no particular order, so it might seem like we're jumping around a little bit, but we'll just start with the first thing on the list.
Yeah.
And the first thing on the list is tips for your niche. So this is very broad and is going to depend on what your niche is. But tips can be anything, like if you're a watercolor artist, maybe you give some tips on how you paint.
Yeah, like exactly, techniques. And funny enough, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, wow. So Melissa, like, I would love to know your intro marker. You're getting into being an illustrator. What's a great intro set? You're buying something as a gift for a niece or a nephew. Like, what did you like it as an artist starting out? Or, for me, what kind of paints do you use? What kind of paints would I recommend other people use? People enjoy hearing that stuff, and it's not something I often think about sharing.
Yeah, and there's that works really well if your audience is the type of people who are into painting.
Exactly.
But let's say that you're a watercolor artist and your audience isn't really interested in becoming a painter. They just really like your work. So Heather does something that is great for people who are art appreciators. She runs a workshop on how to build a gallery wall.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so
Yep.
she might not put the instructions in the newsletter, but she runs the workshops and she can certainly talk about things like that. So there's so many different ways that you can spin this one. You can do mini tutorials. It could be, places where you can hang the art, places where you can use candles, to think about what it is that you produce or make or create, and think of ways that you can give people who buy it tips on how to use it, where to use it.
Yep. It's like the experience all around your product, right?
Yeah. And if your audience is interested in learning your craft, that's where you can do things like little mini tutorials or, this is the type of paints that I use, or this is the brush strokes. I was actually thinking if you were running, if you were like, say, a watercolor artist and you were running a workshop, a great lead magnet to get people onto your list for your workshops would be something like 10 different types of brush strokes all watercolor artists should know, or 5 different, it could be super short, and it would get people onto your list and primed for your next workshop. So.
Yes. And funny enough, that's one of the things, and I do it so well for other people, and I struggle with my own list. But just as you said it, 3 things, 5 things, listicles work really, really well. And so saying, 3 tips for hanging artwork, 3 tips for framing artwork, 3 tips for buying colored markers, 3 tips for storing markers. Yeah. You can use and I love odd numbers, but 3s, 5s, 7s, well, and then of course 10, which is not an odd number. But listicles work so well, and in fact they would work well with so much of the content that we're going through today.
Yeah.
And the other thing, in terms of tutorials, it might not, so a watercolor tutorial might not appeal to 100% of your newsletter audience, but if that's something that you have on your YouTube channel, using your e-newsletter subscriber list to tell them, hey, did you know I've got this content and it's over here, sending people over to your YouTube channel, you might engage a whole portion of your audience who might otherwise not have known that content was out there.
Yes. Yeah. This is one of the things to think about with newsletters, is that very often your newsletter followers may be different than your YouTube followers, or maybe different people than the people who are on your Instagram. There's going to be overlap for sure, but it really depends. So, one thing I remember being told years ago is to think of your website as your hub and all these other things as your spokes. And the idea is you want to connect all the spokes like they would be connected on a bicycle wheel. So your newsletter is connected to your Instagram, which is connected to your YouTube, which connects back to your, and the website is the hub for the main hub for all the content and product and everything. So that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, so definitely lots of stuff you could do there with tips in your niche and tutorials and things like that. The next one, and this one to me is super obvious, but a lot of people don't think about it.
I know. It's funny enough, this is literally the only one on the list that I'm like, yep, check, I've done this. Because to me, and this is the exclusive discounts and giveaways, that is how I have hooked people into being a subscriber, is by saying, the only people who will ever get access to sales or discounts are subscribers.
Yes. So exclusive content. And it doesn't just have to be giveaways and discounts for those of you who are not into doing those. It can just be content that they can't find anywhere else. It's not on your YouTube channel. It's not on your blog. It's not on your Etsy store. It's not on Instagram. It's just in your newsletter. But definitely giveaways and discounts and things like that. The way I look at it is that if somebody is going to trust me with their email address, I want to make it so that they feel like it was worth it.
Yeah.
And that it's worth sticking around for and not unsubscribing. And so those people, they get treated nice. I treat them nice.
Yes. I think, to me, the discount on the exclusivity is basically me paying them for their contact information. I feel like it's a privilege. It's something that if I pay for it, I need to respect it, right? And so that's what I always think of, is that discount that I'm giving them is actually me paying for access, like exclusive access to them one-on-one, which is so privileged.
Yes. So some of the things you can do here, one that Heather does is she gives exclusive launch access to new products. My best Black Friday sale price is for my newsletter subscribers. I also do a free coloring sheet. I'm an illustrator, so that makes sense for me. So I draw a coloring sheet for them every month that they get. And this is a fun one too. This works really well for me because when people finish the coloring sheet, they often share it on social media and tag me.
Exactly.
And I always get a couple new subscribers from that. So, so think of different things that you could do. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a sale or a giveaway, but those are great things to do. I will just caution though, if you're doing giveaways, make sure the giveaway is something that is appropriate to what you do and to the audience that you serve. One of the biggest mistakes we ever made, this was in my other business, is we did a giveaway to get people onto our newsletter list. It was an amazing giveaway. It was a Delta touch faucet.
Ooh, fun. Yep.
Yeah, and we had 8 of them to give away. Woo. And we grew our list by like 5,000 people within a week. And after the contest was over, the list dropped by like half.
Yeah.
Because they were just there for the prize. They didn't care.
Yeah.
They didn't care about my content, right? So if you're going to do a contest, just do something that is the right fit for the people that you're trying to draw in and keep. So that's just
totally. And I would even say this is, I feel like we've talked about this before, but it's that, don't reward new people. You want to reward the existing people. And so I don't want to reward new people for jumping on the bandwagon because they want the free thing. I want to tell people that if you are on the bandwagon, there's an opportunity to get the free thing, right? And there's a slight difference in that. I have to get you, and you have to be part of this club in order to gain access to these special things, because those huge unfollows and all those people just like coming in because I'll tell you, I've had 2 unfollows on my email news list, and one of them kind of stung. And and I was like, why did you unfollow? You just bought a painting from me. But it was because they bought it as a gift, and she sent me a lovely note. She's like, I bought it as a gift for somebody else. They're interested in your stuff. I'm not interested. I signed up so that I could gain access and purchase the painting, which is so wonderful, right? But if she hadn't told me that, I would have been a little stung. And so
you'd be wondering, what did I do?
That's exactly it. What did I do? And so I think if that example says anything, it shows how we're so precious with those email contacts, right? And so you have to treat them that way. And anyway, hold on to them.
And this just made me think of another thing that really drives me crazy is when you are already subscribed to somebody and they come out with a new lead magnet or a new freebie or something that new subscribers get, but the old subscribers don't get it. The only way you get it is you have to sign up again. Don't do that to your subscribers. No. Even if they may not be interested in your new thing, give them a link to get it if they want it. Just say, hey, This is my new lead magnet, but you're already on my list. If you're interested, here it is. Like, it takes no time at all to do that, and it makes your list much happier. I hate it when I have to sign up for, like, there was one thing, they put out really great content, but you could only get it by signing up for the newsletter. And I wound up having to sign up like 5 times to get the 5 different things. Annoying. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Anyway.
That is ridiculous, because what does the company benefit from? Like,
now you just have me on your list. Like, anyways.
Oh, no.
Don't do that.
So confusing. This next one on the list is a good one, because that's not something I would ever have thought of, but it's so brilliant.
Yes, and that is link to interesting content that's not yours. Your newsletter doesn't have to be all about you. If you
Wait, what, Melissa?
I know, crazy concept, right? Just like when you're on Instagram and you share stories and reels from other people and posts from other people because you think it'll make your audience laugh or they'll appreciate it or they'll like it, do the same with your newsletter. If you see something that's really cool that you think is a perfect fit for your audience, show it to them. Give it to them.
Yeah. That's a great idea. And even sharing, for instance, inspiration. Like if you're sharing a new illustration or painting or necklace that you made or creative thing, if you got inspired by somebody else, 1, giving credit where credit's due and giving that person a shout out is awesome. But 2, I would be so interested to see, like, even funny enough, Melissa, like, here's the weird, ugly vegetable in my grocery bag that inspired this cute illustration, right? Like, you know, I think that would be so fun to see. And it adds an element of personality to the person who's sending the email. I think that's the most important thing about all of these, is that it's adding layers to you as the sender.
Yes. One of the things that I thought of way too late to do it this year, well, not this year, last year, I guess. I thought of it very late in December, and that was doing a newsletter where I shared links to all the Etsy artists that I bought from this past year.
What a great idea.
Yeah, because like super cute artwork and
Yep.
bits and bobs that I got from some really great Canadian Etsy artists. And I was just like, you know what, like that would be a perfect thing to share, to give people kind of like as a holiday gift guide. Like, yeah, I want you to buy my stuff to give, but if you've bought from me before, here's some stuff from some other really great Canadian artists that you might like, because I like it.
Yes.
And you like what I create. So
Yes, exactly.
so that is on my list for next year for sure, because I think that would have been a really great newsletter to send out. So yeah, the next one on the list is short printable guides or cheat sheets. And so you've probably heard people talk about lead magnets. We've mentioned it a couple times already in this episode, and that is the freebie that you create to get people on your list. So sign up for my list, you get this little worksheet or checklist or list or
My
whatever.
mind immediately goes to that declutter your home January posts and all of the
Yes.
like how to Marie Kondo your closet.
And so you can turn those into newsletter content. You know what? Here's a little guide for, I don't know, how long to boil an egg.
Well, and that works really well, particularly if you have anything where you do tutorials or instructional or, but gosh, I mean, you could even provide a guide to buying on Etsy. You could provide a guide to, I don't know, and it could be things like how to hang art, like a visual PDF on how to hang artwork.
Yeah, or a guide to frames. Like I was just in Michael's yesterday buying a frame, and I bought an 8x10 frame that was matted down to 5x7. And maybe there, people might not understand what that means. Like,
yes,
they have a piece of
exactly.
8x10 artwork. What does it mean is matted down to 5x7? And I mean, all it means is you just take the mat out and remove it and put the artwork in. But if you have an 8x10 piece of artwork, but stuff like that, we know that because it's our job.
Yeah.
But the people who actually hang our art may not know what that means.
Yes.
So,
even funny enough, like I get asked all the time, how do you clean your paintbrushes?
How do you clean your paintbrushes? Where do you get cheap frames that look nice? Yeah, there's tons of little things that you can probably come up with if you just sit down and have a brainstorm session. And a lot of these things...
Funny enough, you could just look through your to-do list.
Yeah.
Find frames for this.
Clean my brushes.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think sometimes we're afraid to do those things because we think it will cannibalize our business. Like, I get asked all the time, where do you get your sticker paper from? And I know some people are super protective of that information, and it's like, who cares?
Yeah, totally.
It's not a secret. Here's where I get it from. Stuff like that. So, think about, and again, divide it into those sort of two groups of people: the people who are interested in doing what you do, and the people who are interested in appreciating what you do. Different audiences. They might overlap.
Yeah.
But, so just think about how you could hit both of those audiences.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because, your email subscriber list is a pretty varied group of people. And just as Melissa said, they're, they could have a whole host of interests. And so looking at that open rate and seeing, oh gosh, I didn't get all the people opening it. Well, people might not be interested in it. And so, but it's more about giving things that keep people interested, so that even if it's every other newsletter that is resonating with them, that they still look forward to every other newsletter, as opposed to saying this no longer applies to me. I could care less. I follow this person on Instagram. I'm out.
Yeah, and you can also get to a point, this is more advanced, but you can get to a point where you start tagging your subscribers based on their interests.
Yes.
And so if they are interested in how to become a watercolor painter,
Yeah.
you can have a separate segment of your list that only gets that content.
Yes.
That gets more advanced and sort of outside the scope of what we're talking about today, but that's definitely something that you can do down the road. It's probably something you want to do when your list sort of hits a certain size threshold, I guess. Maybe.
Yes. And I'll say, funny enough, one of the things, so it is on the list. Sorry, didn't get to the bottom, but we have on the list, and Melissa, forgive me, I'm skipping all the way
That's okay.
to it, but it's a valid point where we're talking about it right now, which is if you're unsure about what to send, do a poll or survey with your audience and ask them, what do you want to hear from me? What do you enjoy hearing about? And asking and soliciting their feedback on a yearly basis is not unheard of, and in fact really smart to sort of check in. It's like having that check-in session with a friend, spouse, partner, where you're like, so we're good, we're still okay with each other, everybody's happy. That's it's a really great way, and I did one last year, and in fact I want to do another one because I found it really, really helpful.
You probably already do this if you're active on Instagram. You probably use their poll or their questions function all the time. Whip that over into your newsletter list where you might have a different group of people. Particularly if you do a lot of in-person events and markets and fairs, those people probably signed up for your newsletter at the event, and they may not follow you on social media at all.
Yes.
That's the people who go to craft fairs can often, there's a segment of people who go to those types of events who are not active social media users, I guess.
Yes.
Or they're very active Facebook users, but not Instagram users, kind of thing. So yeah, send out a poll or a survey. There's so many free and inexpensive ways you can do that now. The easiest one is just to create a Google form and link to the form in your newsletter, and then you get all the answers amalgamated in one spot, and there you go. Pretty straightforward. So yeah, ask your subscribers what they want to see, and sometimes it can be as simple as just putting a sentence at the bottom of your newsletter like, hey, I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or something you'd like to see, just hit reply and send me a note.
Yes.
You'd be surprised how many people actually do that.
Hey, Melissa, funny enough, I saw that in your last e-newsletter, and I was like, oh, that's verbiage I like and I am going to use. And I used it, and I had people reply to me. And I'll tell you, getting a direct reply and then having this email exchange was,
lovely.
It made my heart, it made my heart flutter. I was over the moon to have this direct contact, because when you send it out, you feel like you're sending it out to sort of this like blast of people. But when somebody responds individually, it really, to me, I'm like, I connected with you. Yes. And funny enough, it's that auto reply, like when somebody replies to an Instagram story, I sort of take it for granted that you're having a one-on-one conversation. But when you send out an e-blast and somebody responds to it indivially, to me, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Somebody
we just had this
that.
conversation. Yeah, it's so cool.
Wow. It's like when somebody, you put out a blog post, and the first time somebody comments on it, and you're like, oh my God, people read that. That's crazy. People I don't know are interested in what I'm doing. Yeah. So the next item on the list is share behind the scenes tidbits, personal little news items, mistakes you've made that you've learned from, charitable causes that you support. These were all actually separate items on my list that I use for work, but I just put them under one umbrella, where basically don't be afraid to let people in. People love behind the scenes. Particularly when they support artists and creatives. They love seeing how what they have hanging on their wall, or what is on their couch or their side table, or wherever they keep what it is you make. They love seeing how that's made, and it forges that connection that we were just talking about, where they feel an emotional connection to you. And once people feel emotionally connected to you, they become incredibly loyal supporters of your work.
Yes.
So share that behind the scenes stuff. Same with the personal info. And again, here, I'm not talking about letting them into the deepest, darkest corners
Yes.
of your mind. That's not what this
I got
is.
my period today, everybody.
That's not what we're talking about here. But just let them know that you're a human. Like, share a picture of you hiking with your dog, or, if that's something you like to do, obviously, or just stuff that, let them get a sense of who you are as a person. And if you share a picture hiking with your dog, okay, she likes the outdoors, she likes animals, she has a dog, I have a dog, I love people who have dogs, stuff like that.
Yes. And it's funny, in terms of the personal tidbits, and one of the highest compliments I got on my e-newsletter was I had a friend reply and said, as I was reading this, I heard your voice reading this to me. And while I am all for proper grammar and sentence structure and, writing clearly, I would also encourage you to, in this sort of vein of being personal and being human, kind of write like you talk.
Yes.
Because that helps it become a lot more personal, and I think it's more natural for all of us.
Yes, it's that, as somebody who writes newsletters for a lot of people who are not me, that is one of the hardest parts of my job is adapting their voice.
Yeah.
So
yes.
it is really easy for the YouTubers that I work with, because I can watch their videos and see how they talk.
Yes.
And so that makes it very easy for me to become their voice. It's a little harder when it's like written content, but even then,
yes.
That's so key. And it's funny that you said that, because the whole reason not the whole reason, but one of the reasons I started a podcast was, I used to do a lot of Instagram stories showing behind the scenes of what I did. And one day I did a story, but I didn't narrate it, because I would narrate it. I instead used captions and wrote it. And somebody messaged me and said, it was so weird. I was watching this and I could hear your voice in my head the whole time. And they were like, you should start a podcast.
Yep. Yes.
It's like, oh, that's nice. But yeah, so letting people in and feeling that connection to you. I also included mistakes that you've learned from in here, because that's a really powerful way to have a connection with your audience. And I'm not necessarily talking about your big life mistakes, although you maybe, if that works for you.
Yeah, totally.
But, you don't have to tell them about your crippling student loan debt or stuff like that.
Unless you're attaching like a Venmo, then they can help
yeah, or
debt.
unless you are somebody who helps people get out of debt. I don't know. But more like mistakes you've learned from in terms of creating. So it could be something like I'm terrible at coming with these ideas off the top of my head.
And so funny enough, Melissa, I had a couple people reach out to me after our goal setting episode, and I talked about the failure of the fabrics. And I had a couple people reach out to me on Instagram saying, I just listened to the latest episode. I was so sorry to hear, but it was kind of refreshing that you failed. Was sort of the and it's not like they were saying I enjoy that you failed. It was that they enjoyed hearing that I too fail.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how many failures go into being creative, like producing creative work, I should say.
No
not being creative, but
there are dogs playing poker behind almost every single one of my paintings.
Yeah,
because shit happens.
We have sketchbooks full of concepts that never come to life, and people have garages full of candles that are misformed, and fabric that wrinkled the moment they washed it, and we all have tons of mistakes, and if you can share things that you've learned from in your creation process and how you have gotten through them, that can be super helpful, and again, very something people can connect with.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another thing to do, this is one that doesn't get talked about much, but if you have charitable causes that you support with your work. So not everybody wants to share this kind of information. That's totally cool. But, there are a lot of us out there who may have a product or something that we do where every sale of it, a percentage goes to your favorite animal shelter or children's charity or whatever cause is close to your heart. And let people know, like when you go to make the donation from the sale of that product, let people know, like,
Yes.
hey, thanks to you guys, I was able to drop off a check for $200 to my animal shelter today, and that's all because of you all buying this product or whatever. Like, let them know what a difference their decision to buy that thing has made. So
there's an Instagrammer that I follow out of the UK, and his name is Greg, but his Instagram is Man with a Hammer, and he is in the process of restoring a very old naval officer home.
oh wow.
And yeah, and it's so cool to watch the journey, and he's got just a lovely British accent, so of course listening to him is delicious. But as he goes through, he did a post the other day talking about how part of the process was to ensure that he was giving back to charity. And he did a post the other day that almost had me in tears in terms of his commitment to giving back and what he's trying to build. And that just like made me love him even more, and want to support him even more, because I thought, gosh, this is so, I can get right behind this. And I don't even need to know the charities necessarily. I just think the way he's doing it and everything is so wonderful and transparent that it's worth supporting.
And the thing of it is, most creatives are like that. Most of us do stuff like that. We just maybe don't talk about it as much as, and I know it can be a very weird line, like between supporting a group or an organization and then making it sound like you're, like you said, like, I'm amazing, look at how selfless I am, that kind of thing. And it's a fine line. So, this is something to think about in terms of how it makes you feel and how comfortable you are sharing. But I do think that if you do have a product where proceeds go to a charity, I do think you should share that with the audience.
Yes.
I think that part of that is being transparent. It's like, hey, I said I was collecting this money, I did collect it, and now I'm giving it to the people I said I was going to give it to. Right?
That's exactly it. And I think too, in terms of bringing people into the community, you need to acknowledge that you helped do this, right? Like, this isn't all about either Heather or Melissa giving money to charity. Heather or Melissa wouldn't have had that money to give to charity if the community,
for all of you. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So it's very different than you just on your personal time, doing whatever.
Yeah.
Which you, and encourage your friends to do it as well. But it's very different if your community has been an active part of that, because I think not sharing that could let them down.
Yes, totally agree. It's being transparent about what you're doing.
Totally. So
yes. Next on the list is, I have utilized your website archives, but honestly, this is not just about your website. This is about your entire archive.
Yeah.
Whether it's physical, digital, anything. It's really easy if you blog as part of your business, because then you just have links that you can share with people. But one of the things to remember is that when somebody signs up for your newsletter today, they may not have a clue about what you did last year or the year before or the year before that. And so all that stuff that you created, that's a gold mine of content to share. And there's so many ways you can do it. So this is something I do in the food space a lot. A lot of the people that I work with create recipes. And so very often what we'll do, at Christmas, when we're putting together the holiday newsletters, we will go back into the archive and pull out the amazing turkey recipe they did 3 years ago, or all the cookie recipes that they've done throughout time immemorial. Kind of
exactly thing. Like all the cookies.
So that's a really easy one to do if you're a blogger, but there's other ways that you can do it. So one of the things I did last year, I did my coloring sheet. One of the coloring sheets that I did was like this underwater scene of an octopus with like a treasure chest and all, it was an underwater scene. But what people didn't realize when they got that is that was the culmination of 5 years worth of sketchbook sketches. And so what I did is I went through my sketchbooks and pulled out all the sketches that I had done over the years that inspired that final piece.
Brilliant.
And I shared them with my audience. And you don't just have to share them in your newsletter. You can share them on social media. Like share them wherever, right? Use that content that you've already created. So in this case, it was a physical thing. It was a physical sketchbook sketch. I just put all the sketchbooks opened to the right page on top of each other, and I just took a picture, and that's how I shared it. So it wasn't like super complicated. I wasn't scanning images in or doing any of that. Yeah. But go back and show them this was my style 5 years ago. This is my style now. Like, show them how your style has evolved. Or go back, and if you published a newsletter that did really well like 2 or 3 years ago because it had a great article on, I don't know, how to use Sharpie markers or something like that. There's probably a huge chunk of people in your newsletter who haven't seen that. And don't be afraid to repurpose that. You might not want to do it exactly the same as you did it 3 years ago, but you might want to alter it a bit or take pieces of it, take bits and pieces from old pieces and create a new piece of content with it. So, you don't have to reinvent the wheel with every newsletter.
And if you don't have a blog, if you have alternate social media channels, YouTube, even your Instagram, like I've done it where you link to a highlight reel and you say, if you want to watch the whole process of this dollhouse coming together, here's the highlight reel on Instagram. Yeah. And so it's connecting people from one platform to another, but it's also giving them, if they want it, the choose your own adventure opportunity to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole with more. And
you can easily embed a YouTube video into a newsletter. Most of the platforms will let you do it with just copy and paste the link, and boom, the YouTube. And so people can view the video in the newsletter, and you still get the views. So if you've got a monetized YouTube channel, you're getting the views, and it counts towards your monthly revenue. So use that old content. And that was kind of the next one on the list, is sort of follows from that, and that is links to your latest content. Yeah. So whether it's a blog post, a YouTube video, a podcast episode, a podcast that you've appeared on, maybe you did a guest interview, share that with your audience. Maybe you got featured in on a local news website or a local newspaper, or you partnered with somebody really cool or something. Share that. Let people know. I have a client who appears in the media regularly, and we, at the bottom of every one of their newsletters, we put a little like, catch us here thing. We're going to be here next week on this channel or this radio station or whatever. Don't miss out. This is what I'm going to be talking about. So and that's so easy to do, and it's not being pushy or selling to them. It's just giving them information.
No kidding. And don't feel, and I always hesitate around this, because I'd say 75% crossover. People who follow me on Instagram are also, or I'd say 75% of my email subscribers follow me on Instagram. And so sometimes I hesitate because I'm like, oh, I've been beating this dead horse in my Instagram stories. Why am I putting this in my newsletter? But I realize there's so many people who just tap through stories so quickly, or they didn't absorb it, or their kids were talking to them.
Or you didn't even show up in their first that's exactly 20 Instagram stories.
That's exactly it. I didn't even show up for them that week. They didn't even watch them. Yeah. And so I don't want to say it's repeating yourself, but it's making sure that everybody heard.
Yeah. You have to remember that for people to buy from you, it takes 7 touch points, right? So that one Instagram story, that's 1 touch point.
Yeah.
And the percentage of people who actually see your Instagram content or your Facebook or wherever is very small. Yes. It's very small. It's single digits. Okay. So that means that there's a huge group of people who didn't see it. And I know for us, when we're putting the content out there, and I really struggle with this, it's like, I can't talk about this anymore. I've talked about it twice. I can't talk about it 3 times. Like, that's too much.
Exactly.
I'm spamming these people.
It's like my shitty art class every Saturday morning on Instagram and I just did a story about it, and I was like, oh, right, I need to remind people that the same thing happens every goddamn Saturday. But it's like, I don't get more people coming if I don't tell people to come.
Congratulations too, by the way. You hit the 1-year mark on that.
I know.
Very
a whole year. Isn't that crazy?
No, I don't think it's crazy. I think people really enjoy it. So
we had record turnout too. It was really cool. But that's awesome. Hitting people over the head with it. I feel sort of silly, but this is that same. If you don't invite people in, they don't know that they're allowed, and so you have to constantly be issuing the invitation.
It is. Constantly. It's kind of like when you buy something like you this just happened to me this morning. I am fed up with my shoes, my running shoes. They've got a hole in the side. I need new running shoes, but I'm also fed up of, I live in Vancouver. We get a lot of rain in the winter, and I'm tired of having wet feet walking the dog, right? Because I either wear my big boots, which I don't like wearing just for a dog walk, or I have wet feet. So the company Vessi, I don't know if you've come across them. Nope. I see. Okay, so they're based out of Vancouver, and they will show up. I just, because they're listening because we just talked about it. I know
exactly. It's going to show up on my Instagram.
They show up in my Facebook feed and my Instagram feed at least once a day, and they make waterproof sneakers.
Okay.
And I have been seeing them.
Oh my gosh, they do show up in my feed. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay.
And they have been showing up in my feed for months. Like as soon as we were even remotely close to the rainy season, I started getting ads for them in my feed. And usually when I get an ad for something I'm totally not interested in, I just hide the ad. But the back of my head, I was like, I need new shoes, right? So I never hid the ad. And so I get the ads daily. And finally today, I messaged two of my girlfriends and I was like, have either of you bought Vessi shoes? Because I really need new shoes and I want waterproof ones. And one of my friends actually owns a pair and she's like, yeah, they work. So, they've been hitting me with these ads for months. And I am their target market. They are a Vancouver-based company. I'm in Vancouver. They get rain. I get rain. Like, we understand the wet shoe problem.
Yeah.
Right? But I needed to be hit over the head, like, for months to actually pull the trigger. And today I actually went to their website and looked at what they have. I still haven't bought, but Vessi, if you're listening, I'm close. So now I'm going to get ads like 4 or 5 times a day probably. But
can I tell you though, sometimes that doesn't work because
sometimes it has the opposite.
The opposite effect. When I turned 40 a few years ago, so I'm about to turn 44, there was a particular necklace that I wanted from Tiffany's, and I literally went onto my husband's Instagram. I made sure that his account liked Tiffany's. I then loaded the necklace into a cart on every single computer in the house so that it was like the computer knew.
Oh yeah, abandoned carts are great for triggering Facebook ads.
Right? Exactly. So every single computer in the house on his device without him knowing, number of times, no clue. And then finally, when I said, this is what I want for my birthday, he was like, oh, is that why I've been seeing so many Tiffany's ads? Because because until you're thinking of it, and so the moral of this story is until you're thinking of it or you realize you need it, you might not ever even absorb or see the content.
No,
right?
You might not. But he recognized that he had seen the content. Like he was like, oh, it's there. It's in the back. This is what I'm talking about. What we're trying to say is that you're in the back of their brain. And when they are ready for what it is that you have, they're primed.
Yeah. So. Yes, but you have to keep it in the back of the brain, and that's the thing. So if you can't just say it once, you have to say it sort of over and over again. You have to load that cart.
Yes.
To use the shopping metaphor, you need to load that cart over and over and over. Yeah.
Okay, so all the inner workings of the social media algorithms, yes, and
right?
Facebook pixels and all that stuff.
Ugh.
We're being tracked everywhere. The next one on the list is one that can do extremely well if you think it through. This is one you'll have to do a little bit of planning for, but I have done this in a previous business. I am thinking about one for my current business, and this is special challenges or email series around a specific...
Tell me more about this. I want to know more about this.
So this is... you've probably seen these on social media. So a challenge could be something like, hey, we're going to do a 7-day drawing channel. Like if I was to do one, I could do like a 7-day doodling challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And sign up for my newsletter. And every day during that week, you're going to get a prompt for what we're going to draw. And then we're going to share them on Instagram or in a Facebook group or wherever you want it to be.
Okay.
And we're going to, share our work. And
Cool.
there's challenges like this all over the place. I did one years ago with Food Bloggers of Canada. We did a 30 days to clean up your blog. And we ran it.
Yes.
We ran it at the beginning of January. I think the first time we did it was 2014, and it was extremely successful. So the prompts went out daily in their newsletter, and it was a blog post that they would go and read, which brought traffic to our website, which we wanted. And it had people really engaged because they were like it was something very tangible and useful, and the tasks that they had to do every day were very small. So it was something that would take them 10, 15 minutes. Right. And the idea was that at the end of the month, they would have a blog that had the back end whirring away nicely. They were connecting with other people. And it was so successful that we ran that challenge multiple times over the years. We always did it in January because it was sort of the time of year where everybody's thinking, they've got all their goals. And usually one of their goals is, I got to clean things up and stuff like that. But there's lots of other ones out there. There's like the green smoothie challenge that the Green Smoothie Girls did years ago, Jada Selner, and I cannot remember the name of the other woman who runs the company, but so for every day for a couple of weeks, you got a different green smoothie recipe along with a shopping list, and you made yourself a green smoothie to drink every day for 2 weeks. And the idea was that, so there's so many ways you could do variations on this.
Yeah, totally.
You just have to sit down and think about it. It doesn't always have to be a challenge. It can also just be a series of content emailed around a specific theme. So
in fact, it could be a challenge for yourself. I've given myself a challenge to say paint a painting a day, and so here is the result of
and here's
as an example.
And that's kind of the idea. Is like if you're doing a challenge like that, like if you decide you want to do a painting a day because that's part of your creative goals for the year or whatever, bring your audience along, invite them to do it with you.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the idea behind it. If I was to do a doodle challenge, I would 100% create doodles. I just did one with an Instagram artist. She did a 7-day challenge. It wasn't a challenge, but just a 7-day prompt to kind of get your creative juices flowing for the year. And it was very simple things, like one was bottles, one was cookies, and it was up to you to interpret the prompt however you wanted. And there's lots of other ones. There's just, a big one is the 100-day challenge. If you decide you want to participate, which I just got an email, they're starting on February 13th this year, which I think is different than previous years. But anyway, if you wanted to participate in that, that's something that I do most years. Bring the audience along with you. Just say, hey, I'm doing the 100-day challenge. If you want to see what I'm going to be doing, sign up for my newsletter or for my Instagram account. I'm going to be posting my my creations at the end of every day. For something like the 100-day one, you might not want to send 100 days of emails, but you might want to do a weekly email where you share all the things you did for the week. Yes. So, be reasonable about it. But they're great ways. I find they work best when you can bring the audience along with you and get them to participate as well, because then they feel invested in it and they enjoy it. And a lot of people will drift off. A lot of people don't finish those types of challenges, but a lot of people do. And if your challenge gets to a point where it's really successful, I've seen a lot of people open private Facebook groups for their challenges and grow their community there as well. So it's another great way that you can build community in different locations and have the opportunity to, Facebook gives you more of an opportunity to have conversations. So
totally. And in fact, I see that a special challenge or something like that being a great way to cause people to jump from platform to platform. So you promote it aggressively on Instagram to get people to sign up for your e-newsletter, but then the people on the e-newsletter, you're telling them to go over to Instagram to see the final product, or your YouTube. Like there's so many ways you can act as the road sign for the adventure that your friends, family, customers are going on.
Yes. So that's a really great one. I know a lot of people who've built their lists up considerably by running challenges. A lot of food bloggers will do things like meal prep challenges, pantry challenges. All it's very popular in the food space, but I think it could work in any space. frankly.
And that's something, like, if you're thinking about doing it and you're sending out a poll, which we discussed earlier, or a survey to your members, if you said, I'm thinking about doing a challenge, here are 3 ideas that I'm floating, which one would you like to do
Yeah,
best?
absolutely. And see where you get the
Then
biggest.
that's exactly it. And then you have them help guide you, but then they're already invested. Like, they've
Mhm.
already said they want to do it,
Yeah,
and you haven't even announced it, really. So
absolutely. That's a brilliant suggestion, is get them involved. The earlier you can get your audience involved, the better.
mhm.
Like, for everything, not just a challenge, but even the launch of a new product line,
Yeah. Yes.
just anything like that. Just give them the opportunity to get involved from early on. If you want to do a workshop, offer a beta version where people get a
Yeah.
discount and they can come in
Mhm.
and try it for cheaper, on the condition that they give you feedback on
Yep.
what worked and what didn't, kind of thing. So
Yep.
yeah. Next on the list is a forever series, and this is getting into a little bit more of the advanced side of newsletters, but this can be a really powerful tool. A forever series is basically a series of emails that go out on an automated schedule the minute somebody signs up for your list. And it's so, like, if Heather signed up, if I had a forever series that went out once a week with information, and Heather signed up for my newsletter 2 months ago, she would get the first newsletter in that email series. And let's say I sent it out weekly. By the time she got to today, she'd be getting the 8th newsletter in the series. But somebody who signs up today is going to go and get that first newsletter in the series. So at any given point,
Wow.
people are at a different place in the series. But
Yes.
the newsletters are basically evergreen, I guess is the word I want to use. And evergreen content, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is content that is appropriate any time of year. So whether you open it in March or you open it in December, it's going to be useful. And so,
and generally even year after year
yes,
after year,
exactly,
with minor updates.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember somebody said in a Facebook group I'm in, she's just like, you know what? I'm just going to take a month. I'm going to write 300 emails. I'm just going to put them into a forever series, and that's it. I'm not going to write another newsletter ever again. Because she figured that was going to be, basically, 6 years worth of newsletters if she sent them out weekly.
I'm not sure I agree with that strategy, although I appreciate the rationale.
I appreciate where she was coming from. She was just like, I don't want to write newsletters, so I'm just going to do it all at once. And so this is something I do with clients. It works really well in the food space because we use their archives to create these newsletters, and usually they're just roundups of recipes on a theme. So at any given time, somebody who signs up today will get the first one, which might be 5 recipes for cucumber or something like that, and so it works really great because it allows them to use all this amazing content. Some of these bloggers have been blogging for 10, 15 years, and they've got thousands of recipes on their website. And somebody who's just found them today is never going to see those recipes from 10 years ago unless we purposely share them with them. And so that's where a forever series could work. So I've never done this within my creative businesses, and I just was thinking about this the other night, like, how could I set one up for myself? And I haven't come up with a great idea for myself yet, but I do think it's something that could work. Again, requires a little thought. This is a more advanced technique that you can use, but if you have a blog, like, this would work great for digital content creators, whatever your niche. So if you're a DIY blogger, a design blogger, a lifestyle blogger, any of those types of things, YouTubers, it would work well for you. You could share older videos that are really popular, kind of thing. And usually those forever series emails are very short and sweet. So it's just a few links, not much talking. And the idea is that it's just an automated system. You just plug a new email into the queue, and away you go. So something to think about. Next on the list is frequently asked questions.
That's a good one.
So if you're on social media, I am willing to bet that you get asked the same questions over and over again. I certainly do. I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Yep.
So instead of feeling like you have to answer every single person who DMs you about I don't know what kind
What
of
paint you use.
watercolor
What paint
paper you use,
Yeah,
what kind of paint you use, where'd you get that brush.
Mm-hmm.
Start making note of those things and create newsletters for them. Here's the brushes I use, here's the paper I use, here's where you can buy my products. Better yet, if you have your own website, create
Yes.
blog posts with that information, because then you can not only put that in your newsletter, you can also give people the link when they ask you those questions in your
Exactly.
Instagram DMs. Just say, oh, I answer all those questions here on this blog post. Knock yourself
Yeah.
out. Saves you a lot of time and money.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's those frequently asked questions that you get, those are a gold mine for newsletter content.
Yeah, and those are also, think of it as an opportunity to think of like what are the questions that you actually wish people gave you, right? And so it doesn't have to be necessarily the actual frequently asked questions, but like, do you wish people would actually ask you, I don't know, what's your favorite drill or power tool or pen, or how do you set your desk up ergonomically, or there's things that you want to share with people that you wish people would ask about, and you can pretend it's a frequently asked question, right? And so there's ways to share information. It's sort of like that behind the scenes personal tidbits, and you can frame it up as an FAQ.
Absolutely. And another thing, if you want to monetize your newsletter, because newsletters can actually be a source of revenue on their own, if you plan and think about it correctly. And so one of the things you can do to earn a little revenue from your newsletter is to share affiliate codes and links where possible. You have to be careful with this, because not all companies allow you to put affiliate links in your newsletter. And the big one is Amazon. That's a big no-no with Amazon. You can't do that. But I do believe what you can do on Amazon is you can create a shop. And I believe, and check this before you do it, I believe that you can put a link to your Amazon shop in your newsletter.
If you can't, you could link to your Instagram stories where you feature a highlight reel of
or your blog post where you talk about
them.
You can put Amazon links in your blog posts. You just can't put them in newsletters. I'm not sure what the rationale behind that is, but I'm sure it has to do with not overly spamming people with content they don't want. So yes, but a lot of other companies will allow you to use affiliate links in your newsletters. And so if you have a drill that you use all the time and you have an affiliate link for wherever you buy it from, share that.
Share it.
You just make sure that you disclose that this is an affiliate link and you earn some money. That's very important. You legally have to do that. But yeah, I mean, if it's a drill you don't use, then it gets a bit questionable ethically.
Yes, exactly.
But if it's the drill that you use all the time and people see it in your stories and your videos, then, you're not making it up. You use this drill. You love it.
Exactly.
So, yes, that's a great way that you can add a little bit. That's just an aside. That wasn't really on the list, but
I love this next one on the list. This one I think is such a powerful one. Yes.
Share customer reviews or photos of your customers using your product from social media. This, I know for some people this can feel a little bit salesy, but you don't have to do it all the time.
No.
But it's a great way. It's what's called social proof.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a great way to do this. And I can't remember. There's a clothing company. I want to say it was Old Navy, but I don't think it is. Who does this, where they essentially encourage their customers to share themselves wearing the clothing on Instagram and using a specific hashtag. And if they're told up front, if you use the hashtag, we might feature you in our newsletter.
Yes. There's a couple of brands that do that, and literally on their website, like they have, I've shopped on a couple of websites, that literally the photo for the product is a highlight reel of Instagram photos of actual influencers, people out in the wild wearing these items.
It's a really,
which is so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's really powerful because it's showing real life people using your product. It's not models.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people out there who would love the opportunity to be featured in your newsletter. Like there's people who
Totally.
really love that kind of thing. There's people out there
Yes.
who don't, but they're not going to
Yep.
send their pictures in, so you don't need to worry about them. But the people
Well, exactly.
who do want to be featured, like let them
Yes.
let them know this is the hashtag that you can use, and
Yep.
we might share you. Be very careful though that if you do use photos that you have the permission. And I think hashtagging is considered these days a form of permission, but make it clear that they are going to be in your newsletter before
Yes.
you send it out. But
I love seeing where you and I have talked about this before. I love seeing where my art hangs up. Like it makes me so happy to see if it's hanging above the toilet or hanging above the bed or in your hallway or like, where did you put it? Because I birthed this thing and I want to know that you're taking care of my puppy.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so to me, it makes me so happy. Like it's such a validating experience for me to see my own work in other people's homes. And I think it also provides a lot of fun inspiration for other people. Right? Like your Christmas gift tags, as an example. Like if I saw photos of how other people were using it on wrapping, I may have gone out and changed up how I was wrapping presents because of other people's inspirational use of that product.
I sold a lot of gift tags because people shared their pictures of their wrapped presents with my gift tags on them.
That's exactly it. So it's like you want to encourage people to do it just for in general, but also I think it's such a rewarding anyway. And if you're a customer listening, if you have ever bought anything from a small vendor and you've never shown it online, share it, because it just like a sale, I do just as big a happy dance.
Absolutely. It's one of the easiest, cheapest ways, as in free ways to support a small business, is to just share pictures. Yeah. Next on our list is introducing your team.
Ooh, this is a good one.
So I know a lot of us are solopreneurs. We don't have teams in quotation marks, because I think a lot of us think that a team means employees.
Yeah.
Your team is not just employees. Like if you have employees, introduce them in your newsletter. Like I follow Opus Art Supplies. I buy a lot of my art stuff there, and they do this all the time. They feature other artists in the community. They feature a lot of their employees who are, almost all of them are artists in their own right. And, they'll be like, hey, meet Catherine. She's an anime illustrator, and this is some of her work. And, this is Bob,
That's
and
so
he's
cool.
a woodworker, and this is what he created, kind of thing. So that, that's something you can do with employees. But you can also do this. It could be somebody, if you have a virtual assistant who helps you out with your email or with your social media or something, just say, hey, when you send in your questions about where you can buy my latest print collection, this is so-and-so, and she's the person who answers those questions. And, this is what she loves to do. She has a dog, and she does macrame.
But it honestly could be something as simple. So like I have no partners. That's it. It's just me and the dog. But I buy my bags from Clear Bags, right? Where you buy your bags from. And they're a Canadian company, and I love their service. And to me, they are a partner in my success. If I didn't get this awesome product to ship my stuff out in, the end result would be a little less awesome.
Yeah.
And so that to me, like saying, hey, and that's part of sharing your brand story too, right? Like I believe in sustainability, so I'm using the compostable bags from Clear Bags, and I believe in supporting a Canadian company, and they're a Canadian company. And so like you can build all of that in. This is where I get my canvas from. This is where I get your
suppliers,
source. Exactly.
Who prints your greeting cards, or who prints your notebooks, or whatever, like your print production partner. It could be there's so many different people who touch your business on a daily basis, and it could just be like, hey, I just want to let you guys know, if you ever need business cards printing, I use printer XYZ, and they're amazing.
Totally.
And I use them for all my printing needs, whatever. Like it's a way to talk about people who aren't you. But who contribute to your business.
That's exactly it. Who contribute to your business. And it could even be, and just as we're talking, an example rings in my brain. One of the latest paintings that I did, the big tall piece, the one that, the rainbow one, This Must Be the Place. When I did that one, I couldn't figure out what to name it. And I threw it over to people on Instagram, and a girlfriend who I've met through Instagram named the piece. And when she did, it was like, yes, this is so the perfect name. Like, it was immediate. And so when I introduced that piece to my email subscriber list, I gave a shout out to Hillary, who helped name the song. And so I told the story. Here's what happened on Instagram. I threw it out. Hillary came back. This was the great choice, blah, blah, blah. I got a note from her and she was like, the shout out in your e-newsletter made my day. And I didn't link to her. I literally just said Hillary. Like, it could have been any Hillary in the world. Nobody knows who this person is, right? But she knew that it was her.
She knew it was her and she felt appreciated.
Yeah. And so it's part of that, like, your team, your partners that, like, think really, really broadly. Really.
You just made me think of one that's not on the list. I can't believe it's not on the list because it's so obvious, but
that's why it's not on the list.
The story of your latest piece.
Yes.
Like, how did this piece come about? This works particularly well if you are somebody like Heather who creates larger scale pieces that take more time. You know, I'm not necessarily going to share the story of every greeting card that I create, but if I was creating a giant painting that's going to cost thousands of dollars, I'm going to tell the story behind the piece, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes, and that's exactly it. Like, tell that story, weave the narrative, and bring people in, because I think it's such a cool. And if you did, you know, a time lapse of the drawing or painting or process, you know, then say you tell that whole story in your e-newsletter, and then you link them over to the time lapse or whatever that you shared elsewhere. Yes. There's so many ways to connect the dots and bring people in, and it's not about sharing like all the trade secrets or all of the...
No, yeah, absolutely. Think about how many times you've heard a song on, you know, like, this works really well with music, but, you know, you hear a song on the radio, and it's the radio. Do people listen to the radio anymore? I don't know. You hear a song on Spotify.
Yep.
Showing my age. You hear a song on Spotify, and you're like, that's a cool song. And then for some reason, you go to a concert, and the band whose song you heard that you thought was okay, they're not the reason you're going to the concert, but they're the opening act. And they play that song, and you hear it live, and you get the energy and the everything behind it, and you're like, oh my God, this song is amazing. And it becomes one of your favorite songs, because now you're associating that song with an event that you really enjoyed, with an energy that you felt around it. There's so much going on with it. And it's the same if you hear you know, that musician in an interview talking about how they came up with the idea for the song or what caused them to write it. It's, you know, it's a really touching story, or it's, you know, it was about the death of their parent or a pet or something. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness. And you're riveted to the interview because like, this is amazing.
Melissa, you want to talk about dating? It's the liner notes on a record. This is what we're talking about here.
Yes.
It's the liner notes, because those are the things that tell the story behind the creation. Yeah.
And so, you know, if you hear the story behind one of Heather's pieces and it's like got a real emotional pull on your heart, you're going to be sitting there going, I want that piece in my house. Like, that resonates with me. So don't be afraid to tell those stories.
Yes. And even if it's not about that person buying it, if my story connected with their heart, they're more likely to even just tell somebody at the grocery store that they saw a painting by an awesome artist,
and
right?
They're more likely to look for your new content. Like, they're going to be connected to you for life, basically.
Yes. Yes. And in fact, when you tell a story and connect with people, they're going to be more likely to lift you up. In fact, I had somebody tag me on LinkedIn recently because of a painting that I did that said, Heather, this, I immediately thought of that stunning painting that I still can't stop thinking about. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know who you are, but you follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Yeah. And like, I clearly connected with you. And that to me is amazing because anyway, I think that's so awesome.
Yes, absolutely. So that should be on the list, but I will add that too.
Yes. That's sort of, you know, it's like, it's in that behind the scenes era,
it's
but it's
kind
like
of behind the scenes, but it's a little more
brain.
in depth. Yeah. Like I think sometimes we share the process behind the scenes, but we forget to share the story of behind the scenes. And those are two different things, but they're connected. So, that's a really powerful one. Next is, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but talking about the tools that you use. That's an easy one to do. You know, one of the most easy things I ever did that had the biggest payoff was I did a little IGTV video. This was before Reels were a thing, on how to color with Sharpies, because I used to do these.
Brilliant.
I had this wall calendar that you could color in, and I used to share every month. You know, it was kind of like one of those Zen Doodle kind of calendars, and I would share every month my coloring, and I always did it with Sharpies, and I would get people asking like, oh, how do you get the Sharpies, you know, like to look so nice, and how did they not bleed and stuff. So I did like a little tutorial on how to use Sharpies. It's still on my Instagram somewhere. You can go find it if you really want to see it. But it was just my little tips that I figured out on my own to make it easier, and it did really well. So yeah, that's a great one to do. We talked about polling or surveying your subscribers, so that's a good one to do too.
Yep.
This is one I have not done yet, but I really want to do. And I think it's such a great idea. And that is teaming up with other small complementary businesses and introducing each other to your audiences.
Yeah.
You can
That's
even
a good one.
Yeah, you can even take this a step further and do a collaboration with them. And this is something I've been thinking about, because I'd really like to do like a greeting card box or something, but I'd like to bring in some other artists monthly to kind of, or however often I do it, to kind of be part of it.
Round it out,
Yeah, just something like that. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. It could be simply as simple as saying, you know, Heather, you like bright, bold colors. I like bright, bold colors. Exactly. Why don't we tell our audiences about each other? The only problem with that is that we talk about each other to our audiences all the time. So they already know.
Exactly. They'll be like, yeah, we know Melissa.
So, you know, but if we had never done that, Heather and I would be a really good fit, because we're very different. Our finished product is very different and appeals to a different price point. But we both love big, bright, bold color. That's kind of what unifies the work that we do. And so if our audience is like that, there's a really good chance that people who like my bright, bold color will like Heather's bright, bold color, and vice versa.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Because it's not like you're trying to compete with, okay, am I putting one of Heather's large paintings here or one of Melissa's large paintings here? No. I'm using my day planner stickers from Melissa underneath the painting that's from Heather. You know what I mean? Like there's complementary. And I think that's the thing, is that it's speaking to audiences who it's so complementary. You can have both of the things and they're not competing for dollars.
Exactly. Very different type of thing. It's different to spend several $100s on a painting than to spend, you know, $20 on a small print of a doodle. Like, it's not even the same medium, right? So yeah, think of other small, and this is a great way to start networking with other small businesses in your area. I am part of my local neighborhood. We have our own little artists makers group on Facebook where we sell our products, and there's a couple of women in there who do things that I've kind of like been like, oh, that would be really interesting to kind of team up with them. So yeah, it's a good way to make friends. And
don't limit this to just your e-newsletter. Like, if you're promoting another business, make sure that you're sharing that in your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your TikTok. Like, make sure that when you're lifting somebody else up, you lift them up everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably doing this on Instagram anywhere. Like, oh, look at this amazing print that so-and-so did. Or often so many artists do that. We just share the work of other artists that we see on Instagram. We're like, oh, have you seen this? This is amazing. Check her out, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Put her in your newsletter too. Like, why not? Just make a note. So it's easy to do on Instagram because it's so in the moment, and you have to think about your newsletter content a little further ahead. So, but if you in the moment, you share that great wallpaper that some artist has created, share it in your newsletter.
Totally. And it's a great way to connect with people. In fact, I think of my my bitch and gallery wall session, which I am hosting my third one of at the end of February. I share inspiration photos on Instagram all the time using the hashtag bitch and gallery wall. And whenever I share it, obviously I give credit to the person whose photo it is. And quite often I'll get a thank you from those accounts saying, like, thanks so much for sharing it. And most often people will say, that's a great hashtag, made me laugh, or whatever. And I always say, thank you so much for the beautiful photo. I share this photo in a workshop that I host, and I always give you credit, but thank you so much for giving me such great content that I
Mm-hmm.
can use to host these workshops. And so you're trying to connect with them in a more meaningful way. And for me, these are people who are like massive accounts. And so it's so like I'm just the little guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going, hey, I use your photo in a workshop, giving you credit, obviously, but it's such a nice way to network with people and connect with people and say, I really value what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And
So,
if they do message you on Instagram, so they're in your DMs and they don't
mhm.
fall into that other bucket that you don't see.
Yes,
Now you can talk to them, and that's the perfect time to ask them, like, I'd love to share this in my newsletter. Would you be okay with that?
exactly.
There you go.
Yes,
The
exactly.
worst they can say is no.
No, exactly. That's answer's always no until you ask. And what's amazing about it is if you have the courage to ask, most people will be very receptive to it.
Yes, 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 they will. One that we skipped over, I don't know how we did that, is seasonal content. So this
Oh,
is, yes, because this is a big one actually. And we're
yes.
not just talking about seasonal as in the holiday season, we're talking about seasonal content throughout the year.
Yes.
And this kind
All
of
the seasons.
all the seasons, and this kind of teams up with the next thing that was on the list, which is themed newsletters. So these two
Right.
can kind of go together, although themed newsletters you can do all year round. But
Hmm.
think about one that is so easy for creatives is think about trend reports. Okay, a
Yes.
lot of us are in the business of color. And, we probably everybody who is in the business of color who listens to this podcast is very aware of the Pantone color of the year for 2022. Like we all
Perry,
wait.
Perry.
Yes, I
Yes.
love it. Oh my gosh, it's
Me
like
too.
I love that color, dusty blue
Yes.
color.
Oh, it's
And
so
I have already
perfect.
used it in a product this year. I'm so excited about it.
Because duh, like if it speaks to you, every artist is using it.
Yeah,
Why
well, this is
wouldn't
just
you?
it. All of us artists, we wait for the Pantone color of the year. Whether
Yes.
we agree with it or not is another thing, but we want to know
Correct.
what it is, right?
Yes.
Because we know that as soon as that color is announced, all kinds of stuff is going to start pouring out of the woodwork
Yep.
using that color. It's just what happens. And so, that is a great way to talk about trends.
Yep.
And so maybe for Heather, because she does a lot of large scale paintings, it might not be that she's going to necessarily incorporate that color into her paintings, but she could talk about, excuse me, I've got the hiccups.
Do I need to scare you? Boo.
No, I think I just needed to breathe. She could talk about, spring colors for
Hmm.
refreshing your home decor. Like,
Yeah.
she's not a home decor person. Oh, you were in a
I
past
was.
life, but she's a
Exactly.
painter. But paintings are part of home decor.
Exactly.
You could do the same if you're a candle maker, right? Candles are part of home decor. So you could talk about 5 ways to freshen up your home decor this spring using the Pantone color of the year. And oh, by the way, here's my candle that fits into that
Exactly.
home decor,
Yes.
right? So you slide yourself in there, but it's not just about yourself. If you're a
Yes.
jewelry designer, trend reports, fashion, like the different fashion seasons, huge for you. You can talk about different ways to accessorize.
Hmm.
Of course, including your earrings in there or your necklace or something, right?
Yeah.
Or your new collection. But you're also going to showcase other ideas. So, like, if you like bold jewelry, you might want to try this. If you like delicate jewelry, this would be a great, so it could be color palettes, seasonal trend reports. It could be gift guides, particularly as you're coming up on like the big gifting seasons, which I would say would include Valentine's Day,
Hmm.
Mother's Day, Father's Day. Not quite as popular. Poor
No.
dads. They just
I know, eh?
they get the short end of the stick.
No kidding. And like a shitty collection of ties. Like, really.
And then of course the mother load of Christmas, Hanukkah, and all
Yeah.
the December holiday guides. So
Holidays.
this
Yeah.
is a great way to showcase your product, but also showcase other products that are complementary and a good fit. Super easy way. Gift guides are very popular, and it's an easy way to pull things together. And for most of us, all you need to do is just go visit Etsy and find cute things. Like,
right? Exactly.
Not hard.
Not hard. Not hard at all.
Yeah, so that's where seasonal content, don't overlook that. Make sure that you plan your seasonal launches if you do seasonal launches, and make sure that you email people when you have a launch. Don't expect them to just figure it out on their own. That is one place where it's very appropriate to sell and be salesy. When you're launching something new, like, be splashy, let everybody know.
Yep.
And that's where theme newsletters are kind of fit into. So you can do seasonal themes, but you can also do themes throughout the year on just, whatever. It could be 5 reasons I'm loving the color blue this month.
Totally. Exactly.
5 books that have really boosted my creativity, or, stuff like that. Super easy to pull those together, and they can be listicles.
Exactly.
So the almost last one on the list.
I know. I love this one. This is a great idea.
Feature a customer. So obviously you need to get their permission to do this, but
could you imagine just like opening an email and there's like your picture?
Don't do that. But get their permission. Very few people will say no to this. But we all have a handful of customers who are very loyal, who buy from us every launch, who promote us, who support us. Feature them, and don't just make it about what they buy from you. Talk about who they are and what they do. If they do something really cool, maybe they're really involved with their local animal shelter. You can tell that I love dogs, right? Because I just keep talking about dogs and animal shelters. That's my go-to examples.
It's a good example, though.
They're a volunteer at their local animal shelter, and or they work with children. They teach children music classes, or there's so many. Think of Humans of New York, right?
Yes.
Do you follow them on Facebook? Did you just follow the one with the choir guy? Did you see that one? Oh my gosh, it was last week. It was amazing. It's amazing. It was one of his 5-part series. It will make you cry. It was just, anyways.
I love that.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes, because if you didn't see it, you have to go see it. It was just, as somebody whose music runs through my veins, like, it just touched me in such an incredible way. So feature a customer and talk about them. And, that's something you probably don't want to do every week, depending on how big you are, I guess. But it's something you could easily do once a month or once a quarter.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. In fact, I'm thinking of a particular girlfriend of mine. She has 3 of my paintings in her home, and they're all very different paintings, even though they're all Heather Travis's. But they're all very different. And I love the fact that she has such 3 vastly different paintings in her home. And it's such a cool little collection. And that's such a neat way to talk about how to buy art, right?
Yeah. I have somebody who buys from me regularly, and she's an amazing lady, and she has something very cool happening in her life coming up soon. She's going to be a guest on the podcast to talk about that.
Cool.
And I'm super excited because she's been a customer for years, and she's very, very loyal. That's going to be fun.
That's super cool.
Yes, it is. And what she's doing fits right in with the podcast. So I'm really excited to have her on in the spring. Yay. Okay, so that's a pretty exhaustive list.
That's a huge, there is so much. My brain is literally reeling, Melissa.
Yes, I hope
if any of you are on my subscriber list, watch out.
But there's one more we haven't mentioned, and that is sell your stuff. Okay, the bottom line for all of this is that you're trying to build a loyal customer base, and you do want, there are times where it is 100% appropriate to sell to them.
Yes.
You don't need to do it every single time you talk to them, but like I mentioned earlier, if you're launching a product, or if you're having a sale or a promotion, or you've got a bestseller that's selling like hotcakes, those are all great times to sell to your list.
Yes.
And as I mentioned,
they know that that's why they're there.
Yeah,
right?
they're expecting that.
Yeah.
You know.
But not all day, every day.
Yes, exactly. So earlier at the beginning of the episode, to tie it all the way back around to the beginning, I mentioned that Trina, in the episode she did with us on email marketing, getting started with email marketing, she said you don't want to sell all the time, but don't be afraid to ask for the sale.
Yes.
And so every newsletter that you send out, make sure that you include a way for people to buy from you, even if you're not selling. It could be something as simple as, obviously, link to your website if you sell from your website, link to your Etsy shop if you sell from your Etsy shop, link to Redbubble, Society6, anywhere that you sell, there should be links to that somewhere in the newsletter, down at the bottom, something. Give people a button to click on.
Yeah.
So don't forget to do that. It sounds obvious, but sometimes the obvious is the stuff we forget.
Yes, exactly.
But there are other things you can do. So I have a client who is, she's a cookbook author. She's got multiple books out. She also teaches classes and workshops. And so in every single newsletter, the only time we sell direct, like push the sale, is when she's launching something new. So if she's launching a new book, we do a sales launch email. But the rest of the year, in every newsletter at the bottom, there's a box where we feature one of her products. And usually what we feature, we try to make sure that it ties into the content of the newsletter.
Of course.
It's at the bottom, so it's not like right in their face when they land on the newsletter, but it's down at the bottom. They scroll down and there'll be a little blurb tying it into the overall content of the newsletter.
Yeah.
It's always the item that gets the least amount of clicks in the newsletter. But
of course.
But it always gets clicks. Yeah. Always gets clicks. So, it may get only 25% the amount of clicks as the other content items in the newsletter, but that's still 25% of the audience is clicking on it.
And could you imagine if you didn't have that click there for them? They wouldn't have even had the opportunity to do the transaction.
Exactly. So for every newsletter, she's getting 1 or 2 purchases. And it might not sound like a lot, but if you send a newsletter out weekly, 1 or 2 purchases per newsletter, like that's quickly by the end of the month, you've got 4 to 8 purchases.
Yes. And as my Nana always said, mind the pennies and the dollars will mind themselves. Right. And so those clicks, those 1 or 2, that those are the pennies and they add up. Exactly. And, these are products she's had for years. So it's not like, and some of the courses are digital, like video courses. So she's not running a workshop every week. Like this is evergreen content. You can go buy her books on Amazon any day of the week. She's not having to create a new book every but again, I didn't know I needed that cookie cookbook until the day that the email came.
You didn't know you needed to eat that book
could.
Until all of a sudden your kid comes home from school and says, I need 10 cookies, enough cookies for everybody in my class. And all of a sudden you have to bake cookies and you're like, oh, so-and-so has that great cookie recipe book.
That's exactly it.
So
that's exactly it.
Just remember that your customers, their circumstances change. Right? Yes. They're not stagnant. You're not stagnant. So they may not need the cookie recipe book today. Yeah. But a month from now, they might. So you never know.
Yes.
So that was a lot. We've gone well over the hour here. But I think this was worth it because I think there's just so much stuff here that you can all use to
I know I can use a lot of these. I'll tell you that much. I think this is such a valuable list for people, and being able to think outside of the email box and being like, oh my God, what do I do? And that particularly for creatives, right? Like I'm good at painting. I'm not right. And unless I have the funds to hire Melissa to write, you're kind of stuck doing it ourselves, right? And so this is such a wonderful way to have all the tools to think outside of that and be, I think, a better community influencer, like influencing the community that you want to influence and work with and be part of. Yeah.
So I think what we'll do, like I mentioned earlier, because this is such a big list, is if you're already on our email list, I will send this out as a checklist to all of you that you can use to refer back to when you're trying to come up with ideas for your newsletter. And if you would like a copy of the list as a checklist that you can store on your computer, and you're not on our list, you can head on over to andshелookedup.com and sign up. There's a sign up box on the homepage of the website. And you
somewhere there.
It's there. And when you sign up, you'll get this in your inbox. So yeah, did you see what I just did there, everybody? I created a lead magnet about ways to get people to send people stuff on your email list, and I created a lead magnet to get you all to sign up for my email list. Yeah. Sneaky.
It's like you knew what you were doing. It's like you knew what you were doing. You've been around the block once or twice, haven't you?
A few times, yeah.
A few times. Exactly. A few times.
All right, everybody. Heather, thank you. This was a long episode. Thank you for sticking it out.
Oh, gosh, I'll tell you, this was, for everybody listening, this was education for me too. We all have so much to learn, and nobody does it right the first time, the second time, or even the third time. So I found this episode incredibly helpful. So thank you for having me.
Oh, no, you're welcome. It was good for me too, because while I do this for other people, I'm not good at doing it for myself. So this was a good refresher, because this was one of the things that was definitely on my list of goals for the year, is to get better at communicating with my list. And so it was a good refresher for me to go back and find what I use for clients and think of ways that I can rejig that for what I do, which is very different from food. So, yeah, that is it for this week. Heather, you did just mention it, but mention it again. You have a workshop coming up. Where can people sign up for that?
Yes, so they can visit my website, which is heatherlyntravis.com, and it's February 24th. It is a bitchin' gallery wall workshop, and we are going to learn all the tips and tricks to bang many holes in the wall and have a bitchin' gallery wall, or 2 or 10, in your own home.
Yes, so, and if you follow Heather on Instagram, she is constantly rejigging her artwork in her house. And making new gallery walls. And she shares lots of amazing gallery wall content in her feed as well, which I always love to see. So yeah, if that's of interest to you, if you have some paintings and artwork you want to get up, go check her out and sign up for her workshop. I know she has a lot of fun in her workshops. So
we have so much fun. The last 2 sold out, and I'm hoping this one sells out. Even if it doesn't, I find it actually even more fun when we have less people, because we can engage even more. So yes. Yeah, so that's it for this week, everybody, and we'll be back with another new episode next week, and Heather will be back again next month. All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com, or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.